Employers are voicing concerns about the challenges with attracting and retaining people in the current jobs market. In many industries, staff shortages are having disastrous effects on businesses, and it is not looking like things will change in a hurry. So to talk to me about this, Joydeep Hor from People and Culture is live via Skype. Joydeep, what's going on here? We speak quite extensively about dynamics in the labour market at the moment and employer-worker relations. But what are some of the challenges that employers are voicing when it comes to attracting and retaining people in this environment?
Yeah, good morning. It's certainly a very different space to what employers have been used to if you trace this journey back over the last decade or so. We're talking to employers as our clients on a daily basis, and the challenges when it comes to keeping people and the challenges when it comes to attracting people are at levels that I have just not heard these organisations experience. They are finding that it is an extremely competitive market. It's an environment where the combined effect of employees knowing that they are marketable, that they can command a lot more than what they might have been able to command previously. Nothing is off the table in terms of what you can ask for if you're a candidate looking for work. And people's price point in terms of remuneration has gone up 15, 20, and in some instances up to 40, 50%, depending on the industry. Employers are struggling because they certainly have not seen in the majority of industries that same uplift in terms of their financial performance that can warrant them just throwing money at people for them to stay. And this is just something, as you say, it's not likely to change in the foreseeable future. Because what we're seeing is that employers are so desperate to get people in that they are just saying yes. And they are incurring that additional financial burden in terms of remuneration and on costs, just because that's what they need in order to service their customer base or client base or whatever else it might be. Really tough times.
How long do you think this will persist? Do you think it's basically a situation where, perhaps because the economy is running so hot, presumably, and a lot of economists tell us that employers are just in a position of less power than they have been in the past. They're finding difficulties adjusting to that, and that maybe if things start to cool off in the economy, maybe migration comes back, things like that, that will sort of see some of these challenges subside.
I think so. I think that migration point you make is a very good one. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts all of this. The other reality is that the way people work, the way people perceive work, and what people have learned at a personal level, at a domestic level, the reprioritisation of people, of their lives and how work fits in with their lives, and that significant discussion around the Great Resignation over the better part of the last year, all of this has radically changed. Employers are looking at new and different ways of competing for talent. The whole working from home thing, whether it's hybrid working, whether it's complete working from home, is at odds with what a lot of employers still believe is in the best interests of their business, which is trying to get people to work in the manner that they did pre-pandemic. Existing employees, candidates are looking at what other employers are doing, whether it's in the same industry or not. And they're saying understandably, well, look, it seems to me that the vast majority of employers are offering hybrid or offering fully work from home. If you're talking to me, even if you're willing to throw a lot more money than what I'm currently earning, but that requires me to do 5 days from an office or a factory or whatever else, that's just not as appealing to me. But I also know that I'm still going to make more money from a remuneration point of view, as well as get that flexibility. So it's just massive upsides. And there are a lot of employers, particularly smaller and medium-sized employers, who are really struggling to compete with that. What's going to change, I think, is only the point at which this variability in terms of what's offered plateaus. And so that then either normalizes, so it's no longer the excitement of novelty, that attracts people to it, or employers just start saying no. In other words, employers striking back and saying we're not going to be held to ransom anymore. We're actually going to start taking things back off the table. And once everyone starts doing that, well, that'll change the landscape.
Do you think this is a thing that is, I guess, ubiquitous across the labour market? Because I kind of get struck by the sense that it's predominantly, to use a kind of pejorative term, the chattering classes and the professional classes that have the luxury of making these demands or having these problems, and if you have perhaps people who are on lower skilled, lower wages, don't have necessarily that ability to say, well, I want to work from home, or I want to work for a little bit more, or have that kind of bargaining power. Is this just a kind of vocal small majority of the professional class, or does this really extend across the labour market a little bit more broadly than that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. There are always going to be industries where the scope for that kind of leverage when it comes to working arrangements, for example, if you're a construction worker, if you're working in a mine site, working in a factory, these are not work types where the work is able to be done from home. But what we're seeing in those particular sectors is that the unions that will often represent workers at particular organisations or in subsectors of particular industries are looking at ways that they can effectively hold employers accountable to increased sets of demands as a substitution for the work from home type flexibility demands that are playing out, as you quite rightly say, perhaps in more white collar work environments. So that too is a shift. So we're starting to see a lot of union bargaining claims that are at higher levels, more significant, not just to cover increased costs of living and things like that, but also throwing in a lot of things that just haven't been tabled for many years.
That's interesting. It's a good point. And anyone, obviously, who managed to get into the city of Sydney today would know, just on top of the rain, there was also issues with the trains, and obviously that's one of many protests and strikes going on at the moment for changes in working conditions. But just one more question before we go, and almost if you were to speak to the audience as if advising anyone out there who might be an employer on how to manage this environment, whether it extends 5 years or it's something that is a little bit shorter lived, how ought they approach these sort of negotiations and relations with their workers to ensure, I suppose, a mutually beneficial arrangement that will, of course, not sacrifice too much of what they're trying to achieve, perhaps as an employer?
Yeah, it is. Firstly, my sympathies and understanding as a business owner myself. I get the challenges, and they are challenges, and I think that a lot of business owners would be saying, look, I'm just really struggling here because so much has changed. I've still got to work as hard as I ever have worked in order to keep things humming along in the manner that they have. My people are becoming what seems to be increasingly difficult and demanding. I feel like they've got me by the scruff of the neck. I have to keep saying yes. My counsel to employers is you have to be very clear about what it is that you stand for. You have to carve out what are your not negotiables, but by the same token, you have to have some things that are going to be negotiables. If you can be in control of what those negotiables are and start socializing the narrative around that, then it will make you come across as though you have thought about these things as being in everyone's best interests, rather than these are things that you have conceded to because people have asked for it or demanded it from you or threatened to leave your organization if you don't offer these things to them. That's the really hard thing for employers to do. But the more that you can be on the front foot around what can you give, what are the areas, where are the areas that you can make some concessions, can you own the narrative around that rather than being seen to be playing defense, that's all going to help. But the other piece of advice and final piece of advice is be patient. Things change. These are always cyclical in terms of who has the balance of power in a workplace context. At the moment, absolutely, it is on the employee side. It will change. What's going to be the trigger for the change, how quickly that change happens, time will tell, but it won't be like this forever.